Third option, not to answer your question directly, is that
I wouldn't expect you to. You're a defense attorney.
we try.
Okay, all right.
But we deflect.
That's today's first shot.
Yeah.
That's it.
The choice of testifying rests solely with Ms. Sneiderman. Doesn't matter what advice she gets from the court, her counsel. Doesn't matter whether they've done some moot courts with her. If Ms. Sneiderman wants to testify, that is her privilege. You asked me earlier, why did she turn down a plea agreement? This could be consistent with, I haven't done anything wrong. I'm going to take the stand. I'm going to tell these people what I did, and they're going to hear that I didn't do anything wrong.
So what would you say to her at this point? I know you and Jerry Froelich have worked as a team before where you don't like to put witnesses on the stand. If she came to you and said, look, I want to go on the stand. I want to talk by Thursday. I want to have my say here. What would you advise her to do?
Hopefully, as a run-up to this, we have done some videotaping. We probably have brought in a jury consultant to assess the words and the body language of our witness and counsel both us and our client about how she is being perceived, both in words and actions.
Anything established today in terms of timeline by having Ms. Newman, no relation to Hemi, who was the director of the Dunwoody Daycare, who said that she told Don Sneiderman that his son had been shot. Don had said on the stand prior that it was Andrea who had told him that Rusty had been shot.
That's a direct defense to one of the counts. Before, you were left with Mr. Sneiderman saying that's what he recalls and being challenged about his ability to accurately recall.
All right.
Now you have a witness that is point blank contradicting his testimony.
All right, we're sitting on 1:30 exactly right now. Derek, you can hear the audio. We cannot hear it right now. They are bringing in the jury right now. Okay. So yesterday we went a long time. We went to about 5:45 yesterday. I think it was about 5:40, 5:45 before Judge Adams wrapped it up. Will we go that long today, would you guess?
Possible. One, he ran late because he was only taking up the attorney's time, not the juror's time.
Right.
He may run late because the jury didn't get into the courtroom until about 11 o'clock today.
Okay.
Wants to give him a full day of testimony.
All right, it is about 1:30 exactly right now. We go into the courtroom. We continue with 11 Alive's coverage of the trial of Andrea Sneiderman.
Come on in, ladies and gentlemen, make yourself comfortable. All right, Deputy Gary, since we're at a break, let's go ahead and swear in Sergeant Calino again for the afternoon session.
We solemnly swear affirm that the testimony give this court should be true, whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
May be seated. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Gary Cortolino, C-O-R-T-E-L-L-I-N-O.
And Mr. Morgan, I think on items 30, defense 33 and 33A, Mr. James, is there a stipulation to this item at this point?
I have no objection. I don't know the corresponding number, but if it's what we discussed, Your Honor, I have no objection.
All right. You may proceed, Mr. Morgan, with that instruction.
Good afternoon, Sergeant. Did you have a chance to interview Mr. Newman in the Dunwoody Police Headquarters?
Yes, sir.
And was that interview recorded?
Yes, sir.
And during a portion of that interview, Sergeant, did you question him about his relationship with Andrea Sneiderman?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And have you had a chance to review that recording?
Yes, sir.
And is it accurate and it portrays what was discussed that afternoon?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask that the state be allowed to play 33. I
You
believe
mean the
it's-
defense?
what- I mean, state. Defense, yeah.
That's fine. Now, do you want to play it as an entirety or a portion?
Just the portion that Mr. James and I have agreed on.
All right. What, I mean, to put it in perspective, what's the length of the interview?
The whole interview, Your Honor?
Right.
Or what we're going to see? The whole thing's about 6 hours.
All right. But you're only going to play a
No,
portion?
we're not watching this.
No, that's fine. Go right ahead. Play the portion. That's
I
fine.
believe the interview that we're asking.
All right, go ahead.
It's approximately 13 minutes.
That's fine. Ladies and gentlemen, if you could direct your attention to the various monitors. If you cannot see or hear, let me know. Ms. Williams, you may proceed.
I want to ask you a personal question, man to man, just between us, and that's it. What was your relationship with him?
Can you turn the volume up, Mr. Williams?
To be honest? No, the rhetorical question. What's your relationship with Andrea? Andrea and I are friends. I mean, she works for me, of course. so the first part of the relationship is that she's my employee. You know, we connected, right? I find her attractive. And I indicated that to her, and she. But again, I'm her manager, so you don't want to play those games. And I said, in the future, when I get a different job, I'd like to continue to develop the relationship. And she basically said, no, I'm committed to us. Did she tell you that? Can I ask you? That's why, because I wasn't there.
No,
I didn't get the message. You got the message.
No. Mr. Williams, can you get it any louder?
When I said,
they haven't challenged his hearing, but ladies and gentlemen, all I can do is ask to turn it louder.
She was very, again, is it in that little book that she sent you? No. Did she send you emails about it?
No, verbal. It was.
The emails at GE, it's all corporate emails, right? It's all corporate accounts and all that. Did it get personal on that between you and her? Personal in terms of? Well, when you had these conversations you're having about her, these feelings you have about her, was it just verbal that you having with her? Yes. And what was the environment? Would you say something to her? Were you at work? Were you at her home? Traveling. You're traveling? Yeah. And again, she said, that ain't gonna happen. Again, you're traveling, you get close, you're having dinner, right? You go out for dinner, you have dinner. And let's not forget your situation too. I mean, you're a young guy. I mean, you're a young guy, good looking, you're making money. I mean, making money, shit, I'm bankrupt, basically. But you're making it, you're not spending it right-wise. Right. I'll give you a lesson later on about that. But so you're conversing with her, and you both feel, you feel good about her, but clearly she wasn't feeling the same for you. Right. Well, that's honest. No, she. Again, we're very friendly, right? But she said, I committed, make a commitment to Rusty, and it isn't going to happen. Now, is this the first time when you said this to her about you'd like to continue this? Yeah. And this is the first time she replied to you in such a manner that it ain't going to go further than this, that she's committed? Did you get a sense? And listen, you're a guy, I'm a guy, you get vibes. No, I know. Look. You just on my neck, man. Oh, sorry. No, I know, but my neck, I got close. No, because I tell you, my hearing's terrible. It's not that one day we went out to dinner and say, hey, Andrea, when you're no longer my employee, I'd like to have a relationship with you. That's not the way. No, that's not the way it happens, right? It's you develop a relationship over time. You communicate, you talk, she talks about her children, I talk about my children, and what they're going through and what we're going through, and she's telling me there's pressures in the house because before she was the one that was in the house. This is good, this is important, man. Now, this is what I want to know. And now he's the one that's in the house, and now she, she has to come to work, and she's not. The initial agreement was that she'd be home at 3:30, and she can't always get home by 3:30 because sometimes there are meetings, and there's and she's venting. So she's venting with you. She's feeling comfortable with you. She's venting with me. I'm venting with her. You're both sharing each other's life, and so the door is open. She's feeling maybe the picture she's painting to you is not as pretty as she presents it. The home life for her. Oh, no, again, she did indicate that there were problems, but, when you're learning these problems, when you're learning about these problems, when she's telling you, listen, I gotta be home 3:30, I'm not getting home 3:30, the job is creating a lot more time on her.
GE's requesting a lot more time. She's got 2 little kids at home.
No doubt.
Listen, and she took that job because, let's face it, GE with the bennies that they got, she'd be a fool to pass it up and not be working when her husband ain't working.
Right.
And GE comes along, she applies for the job, and she gets the job at 128, 125.
128.
I said 128.
So you think she's worth more than I thought she was worth?
Well, considering the extra benefits and everything. But so you're getting this job once way. She sees this as an opportunity. She's not even thinking of the bigger picture. This thing could cost me more hours. But she's venting with you later on a business trip.
Yeah.
That this is creating a lot of problems.
Creating a lot of tension. And again, because our relationship was a friendship.
Yeah, but it's
and I'm the manager. I told her, I said, I gave her suggestions as to how she could make it work better.
And how's that?
Do things like, leave earlier, take care of the kids, work later.
And when you say leave early, so she was reporting to work on a daily basis at that time?
Mostly, because you're going through learning, establishing relationships.
Okay, and this is on a business trip. Was this the trip to Greenville that you...
No, this probably would have been a trip to North Virginia.
And when was that?
Back in June.
All right, so from June to October, you guys, what's your relationship? Because now that you said this to her,
we're open. We talk. She would tell me about the things that she's doing with Rusty, and I gave her suggestions on how things might help, and she's giving me suggestions as to how I can do better with the kids in my situation.
Would it be fair to say that her to know over time you hope to turn to something, maybe yes or...
What's that?
Is it fair to say that...
Only once I'm out of the job. I mean, if she reports to me and GE finds out that anything is going on between us, then I'm hoped.
Right. I understand you risk there, but...
Nothing is going to happen as long as she's reporting to me. But I did express that I do find her, she's a terrific lady.
would you leave GE? If she said, yes, I think we can go somewhere with this, what would you do? Would you leave GE?
I've been looking at spreading my resume around.
Prior to this?
Yeah, but again, her message was very clear. So
well,
my spreading my resume around had nothing to do with my relationship with her.
You were looking to get out of GE prior to this message to her in June?
I do a job that probably could pay me $300,000-$400,000 outside.
If you could find it.
If I could find it.
So you were looking outside.
And even within GE, I was looking for a promotion that would but again, her message was very clear. I made a commitment to my husband, and it's not going to happen.
I don't know about you. I don't know about you, man, but I would have been. I would have. I think I'd feel awkward.
Awkward?
Yeah. You were able to carry on a working relationship with her, and apparently she was okay with it, and she carried one on also. Yeah. You both just continued on the way you were.
Yeah, I mean, that Tuesday I was at her house. Once the boundaries are clear, you carry on.
Yeah. What signs did she give you to make you think that she would entertain your question, your suggestion? Do you think maybe you hit it wrong, or were you picking up on something?
It's hard to say if it was wishful thinking on my part because of my situation, right? Which it could be, right? You have a rocky relationship. You're about to leave the house because I've been thinking about leaving for a while until I finally did in October. So you might pick up on things that you normally wouldn't, or you see things that aren't there. I don't know. I mean, I'm not a psychologist. I can't tell you whether it was my imagination that she felt the same Rusty, you know, the boundary is clear, and at that point you carry on. You know, you say,
And obviously, she probably mentioned it to him, what happened. Did she mention it to him?
I wouldn't think so, but...
Well, did he contact you?
I mean, let me put it this way. He wasn't awkward with me, so my guess is that if
Did he call you? Did he call?
No, if she had mentioned it to him, we would be in an awkward... I wouldn't, that Tuesday night, right, it wouldn't be a, hey, Hemi, how's it going? You know, what's going on? And it's nice that you're at the house and, you know, working on this project, and if there's anything I can do to help or what, you know. That wouldn't be the situation, so I'm sure she did. And, you know, then that had happened months before, so... And it happened before I met Rusty.
And it hasn't happened since.
No.
And that was the only time that you made this suggestion
Again,
to
it
her.
developed up, you know, to that point, and then once the boundaries were set, the boundaries were set.
And have you made electronic email?
Next question.
Thank you, Your Honor.
You're welcome.
Sergeant, during the course of that interview, did you have a discussion with Mr. Newman about Andrea's feelings toward him?
I believe we touched on it.
And whether or not she believed he was a suspect?
I'm going to object at this juncture as to hearsay, Your Honor.
Response, Mr. Morgan?
Yes, Your Honor.
And that last question?
Yes, Judge. Two responses. One, it's not hearsay because it's not being offered to prove the truth of the matter asserted.
What is it being offered for?
It's offered to prove that he made a statement to Mr. Newman.
He made a statement
Yes.
to Ms. Newman?
That he made a statement, not for what Ms. Sneiderman said, but he made the statement. Also, Your Honor, it's also offered to impeach our own witness.
I'm sorry,
Because,
to impeach your own, you mean this witness?
yes, Judge, because earlier in his testimony, he said he was not aware of the connection between Mrs. Sneiderman and Mr. Newman until January the 4th.
All right. I'm going to overrule the objection. Go ahead. If you can answer that
Your
question.
Honor, the only thing I would state
Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
is that this was on January the 4th. And so I don't know how that statement would impeach anything that happened, because if it's going to impeach it, then this interview would have needed to have been before January the 4th. This was a January the 4th interview. He said he wasn't aware until January the 4th. The alleged, hearsay, or at least the statement that I'm saying is hearsay that he's trying to offer happened on January the 4th, and so that's not inconsistent.
I understand you,
Yeah.
Mr. James, I understand. I was going to allow him to answer the question. The jury will make a determination whether or not, quote unquote, it is or is not inconsistent. But I understand.
And
There's
the
no-
only other thing I would say is
Yes.
that I do have a case, Your Honor, that says that Your Honor has the discretion to exclude it. The court's not inclined to entertain the case to do so, then I'll limit this.
Well, I'm just not inclined, I'm going to allow him to answer that particular question based upon the way, if he can. But I understand that, but you can show me the case.
But not introduce the hearsay statement, just say yes or no?
That's correct.
Okay.
At this point in time.
Yes, sir.
Answer the question if you can.
Did you confront Mr. Newman regarding Andrea Sneiderman's suspicion as to whether or not he was a suspect?
No, sir.
You did not.
Well, the answer was no. That was a direct answer, no.
You're not
He said
asked
no.
to be allowed to play a video now to impeach Detective Cordelino.
Response?
And my objection is that I've seen the video, and it's not inconsistent to the way that Mr. Morgan phrased the question. It was not an appropriately phrased question based on the response that I've seen on that video. It's not inconsistent.
Well, it's been some time since I've quote unquote seen the video. For right now, I'm going to overrule the objection, but just, I'm going to let you play whatever video you deem you need to play right now, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
And I understand the objection, Mr. James. All I can do is listen to it right now,
Well,
based on his proffer.
And Your Honor, if I may just a second, I just saw the video before we broke for lunch. And what Mr. Morgan just asked was, did you or did you not confront him? There is a hearsay statement, but it is not based on a confrontation from this particular witness. The hearsay statement was given during the course of an interview. He was not confronted with it. And so what counsel is attempting to do is to backdoor hearsay in. Now, if he wants to ask, did he say it, then this witness perhaps may have a different response, and then I will have the same objection, but it will be based on that. but he's trying to force him into inconsistency when there in fact is no inconsistency. Once the bill's been wrong, it can't be unwrung by me.
I understand, Mr. James. Well, Mr. Morgan, let me do this, and I understand his objection. And like I said, I have not seen this recently. For right now, I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm going to ask you to rephrase the question before any video clip is played. Make sure everybody's on the same page on what you're asking.
Did you tell Mr. Newman during your interrogation, and Andrea Sneiderman said he was
Objection,
never one
hearsay as to what Andrea Sneiderman said. He's trying to get in Andrea Sneiderman's statement again. He's trying to backdoor in hearsay as to what Andrea Sneiderman said, Your Honor, and I've got cases to that point.
Mr. Morgan.
Yes, Your Honor. That's the point, is that, as I stated earlier, it's not offered for the truth of the matter asserted. It is offered to show that this detective asked Mr. Newman that question, and Mr. Newman's response to that question, which goes to the heart of this indictment and the relationship.
Well, I'm not disagreeing. You can respond as far as whether or not it goes to the heart of the indictment. The jury's going to ultimately make a decision on what is in this indictment as far as whether or not the state can prove it proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Go ahead. Anything else?
No, Judge.
All right. At this point in time, Mr. James, I understand your position. Based on this proffer, I'm going to go ahead and overrule the objection.
Thank you, Judge. Mr. Williams, yes, sir.
Andrea came in here today. They talked. I didn't know that. When I was at your apartment, she came in here today and talked. I'm going to tell you what I've been told now. Okay. Of all the people she knows that could do something like this, your name comes up. And I told you before, I was in a whole different direction on it. I was just going somewhere else.
So Andrea came here.
Okay. Again, Your Honor, I know the bill's been wrong, but it's exactly the way I stated it to the court. There was no, the way he asked the question and the way it came in, two completely different things. Mr. Morgan has successfully backdoored hearsay in.
All right.
Again, Judge, it was not here.
No, I understand. Well, we're going to disagree. I've made the ruling. It's been played. The jury will make a determination. And I understand your position, Mr. James. And the jury will make a determination on what they heard during the course of all of this case. Go ahead. Next question.
Thank you, Judge. Sergeant, during the lunch break, were you able to view another video from the security cameras at Dunwoody Prep?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I would ask this time, that would be 34. Your Honor, there are two clips on that particular DVD. One, the state has already played. I can separate the second clip or submit it as it is. Since one clip has already been played, and we could tie that up later, Judge. That's to which disc goes out.
Well, that's different. What do you want to get in at this moment with this witness? That's what I'm trying to make sure we're on the same
Were
page.
you able to view a video of yourself at Dunwoody Prep?
Yes, sir.
And did that video truly and accurately represent that morning, November the 18th, with you and Mrs. Sneiderman?
Yes, sir.
Was there anything different about that video than what you remember? The one that you saw during the lunch break?
No, sir.
Your Honor.
All right. Mr. James, any objection to this clip?
No, sir.
All right. You may play that clip that you just described, Mr. Morgan.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Is this video and audio?
No, Judge.
Just video only?
Just video, Judge.
All right. Next question.
Sergeant, did you recognize yourself in that video?
Yes, sir.
And were you the gentleman in the gray jacket, sports jacket?
Yes, sir.
And what was Andrea's demeanor at that time?
She appeared emotional.
Sergeant, did you make an arrest on January 4th?
Yes, sir.
And who did you arrest?
Pardon me?
And who did you arrest?
Hemi Newman.
Okay. And the state has already introduced evidence that Mr. Newman was convicted and sentenced to life without parole. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
How many days did it take you from the time that Andrea Sneiderman gave you the name Tammy Newman until the day you got an arrest?
When you say me, you talking about the department?
Dunwoody Police Department. From November the 19th to January 4th.
I heard it was 47 days. Is that?
The crime was solved in 47 days, correct?
Yes, sir.
And a conviction and a sentence.
Yes, sir. And
Have y'all solved the double homicide yet?
no, sir.
No further questions.
All right, Mr. James, you may cross-examine if you wish.
Yes, sir. Detective Cordellino. Sergeant Cordellino, excuse me.
Fine.
Let's start back at the beginning of this case. You and Detective Thompson went to interview Andrea Sneiderman, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that was on the 19th of November, correct?
Yes, sir.
And on the 19th of November, you went to her house, right?
Yes, sir.
And you and Detective Thompson, as I stated earlier, were at her house, right?
Yes, sir.
And there were other people there, right?
Yes, sir.
She wasn't in custody, right?
Yes, sir.
Nobody was threatening her or anything like that, right?
No.
She spoke to you voluntarily, right?
Yes.
And when you spoke to her, you were sitting at a table, right?
Yes.
And while you were at this table having a conversation, at some point during the conversation, the topic of her relationship with her boss came up, right?
Mr. James, I have to tell you, Detective Thompson ran the interview. I was sitting at the other end of the table. I cannot tell you verbatim what was said during that interview. He was conducting it. Again, I was up and down, in and out on something else.
Listen to my question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, not asking you specifically. I said at some point during that interview, the topic of her boss, Tammy Newman, came up.
Yes.
All right. Now, when you interview witnesses because you're trying to gather information, right?
Yes.
And you gather information because you believe it may be helpful in an investigation, right?
Yes.
And when you go out and talk to witnesses and gather this information, you rely on this information oftentimes, right?
Yes.
Now, is it a fair statement to say that oftentimes your investigation or the actions that you take in your investigation is based on the information that you get from witnesses, right?
Yes.
And is it also fair to say in some investigations, your investigation is only as good as the information that you get from witnesses, right?
Most of the time.
Most of the time. And so if the information that you get from witnesses is not accurate, then oftentimes your investigation will be flawed, correct?
Yes.
Oftentimes you will go on what's been termed as wild goose chases or down rabbit holes, looking for things that perhaps aren't even there because of information that's given to you by witnesses, right?
Yes.
If you ask the witness specifically, all right, about a motive in a case, and you don't get an accurate response, that could affect your investigation, right?
Yes.
And you've had murder cases before, right?
Yes, sir.
And there are a number of motives in murder cases. There's money, right?
Yes.
There's respect with a lot of street crime gangs and so forth.
Yes.
And then we have domestic cases. You know what I mean when I say domestic cases, right?
Yes.
And in domestic cases, relationships, right?
Yes.
Affairs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Infidelity, right?
Yes.
Sex, right?
Yes.
Romantic feelings between individuals, right?
Yes.
These are motives in murder cases, right?
Yes.
And you use that motive to try to determine who a suspect is.
Yes.
However, if someone tells you that there is no affair, no relationship, then your idea about motive could be flawed, right?
Yes.
Thus, your investigation could be flawed, right?
Yes.
And that's why you say you depend on the information that you get from people.
Yes.
Right. Prior to January 4th, that's the day that you arrested Tammy Newman.
Yes.
Had this defendant right here ever told you that Hemi Newman said he was in love with her?
I believe that was said, yes,
When?
that she was in love with him.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got on it in one of the tape episodes about the relationship. I may stay corrected on that. It was him saying that he had feelings for her.
Okay. You got to listen to my question. Okay. I'm going to ask it again. I'm going to ask it this way this time. Prior to that meeting on January the 4th, all right, this defendant never told you that Hemi Newman said he was in love with her?
No, no.
Okay. Prior to January 4th, 2011, this defendant never told you that Hemi Newman said he wanted to marry her?
No, I did not hear that.
Prior to January 4th, 2010, this defendant never told you that Hemi Newman said, I want to raise your children, right?
Yes.
Prior to January 4th, 2010, this defendant never told you that Hemi Newman sent her chocolates, flowers, and candy, things of that nature, right?
Yes. She never told me.
Can we pull up the chocolate, flower, and candy? Now, you interviewed Hemi Newman, right?
Yes.
That's what we just saw.
Yes.
And he was asked specifically in that interview, were there any flowers and letters and things of that nature sent, right?
Yes, sir.
He was asked that by the detective in that interview, right?
Yes.
And he said when he was asked that, no, there were no flowers, there was no chocolates, and there were no letters sent, right?
Yes.
All right. I want to direct your attention to.
What number is this, Mr. James?
Sorry, Your Honor.
What exhibit number?
State's Exhibit number 16, Your Honor.
All right, that's fine.
I want to direct your attention to State's Exhibit number 16.
You may be able to see that one better.
Now, it's been previously admitted in evidence, and I'll tell you for the record, this was an email from Hemi Newman to Andrea Sneiderman, and it says it was supposed to be a paper. They were supposed to leave it in. Can you scroll over a little bit? In your room, scroll back over, with the chocolates and flowers. Okay, now, again, I'm going to go back to that videotape you just saw. Mr. Newman was asked a direct question about chocolates and flowers and letters, and what was his response when he was asked about chocolates, flowers, and letters?
I'd have to see the clip again.
You don't remember? Can you tell this jury that he said he sent her chocolates, flowers, and candy in that interview?
I asked him that, but I don't recall the answer.
Prior to January 4th, 2010, did this defendant ever tell you that she had been sent a love note by Hemi Newman?
No, sir.
So, let me make sure I understand this correctly. You spoke with Hemi Newman, right?
Yes, sir.
You spoke with Andrea Sneiderman, right?
Yes, sir.
Both of them are saying that there's no relationship, right?
Yes.
Both of them are saying there's no affair, right?
That's what they're saying.
Both of them are saying that there's nothing going on between them that is strictly professional, right?
Yes.
That's what they're both saying, right?
Yes.
And their stories are consistent, right?
Yes. Well,
Now, what if there are emails that says that there were chocolates and flowers sent?
that would be conflict.
What if there was an email from the defendant to Hemi Newman where she's talking.
What's the objection?
There's been no email to say chocolate and flowers were sent.
Mr.
I just want to,
Well, hold on for a second. I just want to say, now what, I can't read what's on the screen. What's this on the screen? What is this on the screen?
It is an email from the defendant to Hemi Newman to the defendant, and it
I
says,
just can't read the top.
Okay.
Can you zoom in on the top?
that's right there.
Okay. I'm going to overrule that objection because that I found it. It is state 16, and it has been admitted in evidence, and it was admitted already as an email. So overruled.
my objection is the misconstruction of the evidence. I see the word supposed, Judge. I don't see that they were sent.
Well, that's a different objection.
Okay.
You said it wasn't straight.
I'm sorry.
I interpret you to saying it was not an email, and I was just trying to see exactly what it was. So I'm still going to overrule your objection. Overruled. Next question.
So they're both saying that there's no relationship, right?
Yes,
Andrea's saying it, right?
yes,
Hemi's saying it, right?
right.
Now, were you aware that there was an email that Andrea Sneiderman sent to Hemi Newman where she's talking about repenting for the rest of her life?
I am aware of it.
Were you aware of it when you had the conversation with Andrea Sneiderman on November the 19th?
No,
Were you aware of it when you had the conversation with Hemi Newman on January the 4th of 2010?
no, sir.
I'm sorry. Did you say 2010 or 2000? January the 4th?
2011.
Okay, thank you.
Stand corrected. You were not aware of that then?
No,
Now, they both said that there was nothing going on between them.
correct.
Were you aware that there was an email that Andrea Schneiderman sent to Hemi Newman in response to him saying, I love you, I know, but so do other people, and I betrayed them all?
I was not aware of it.
Now, they both said there was nothing going on between them, right?
Yes,
But you didn't have this information in that interview, right?
correct.
Were you aware that the defendant's response to this email chain was, so many things I have to say, even if I don't want to?
I was not aware of that.
You didn't have that information, did you?
No, sir.
All you had was what Hemi Newman told you about their relationship, right?
Correct?
And what the defendant told you about their relationship, right?
Yes,
And it was the same thing, right?
yes,
That there was no relationship.
correct.
Detective, you were asked earlier about, we saw a clip where you made a statement that Ms. Schneiderman came in here and said, you know, you were a suspect in the murder, all right? Have you ever used the phrase playing a suspect before?
Yes, sir.
Okay, what does that phrase mean?
Just inserting words to make them think one way, my way, just to give them an idea,
Does that mean, it means you're not telling a suspect the truth, right?
possibly.
Have you ever played a suspect?
Yes,
Have you ever lied to a suspect before?
yes,
Have you ever told a suspect you knew something when in fact you didn't know something?
yes, sir.
Is that standard operating procedure for detectives when they're interviewing suspects?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that you were just playing Hemi Newman when you were talking about what Andrea Schneiderman said?
Yes.
Do you have any independent recollection of Andrea Schneiderman saying anything to you on that day?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this point, I would like to publish a clip. Which one is it, Andy? It is from the disc that that counsel played. It's just it's a portion of the interview that they played
This
earlier.
is what, 33 or 33A?
Yes, sir.
Which one?
It would be the first one, so it would be 33A, I believe. It's from Mr. Newman's interview. The prior inconsistent statement that was introduced, so I believe it was 33A.
All right. Any objection, Mr. Morgan?
No, let me make sure Mr. Williams understands.
Who's going to play it? Mr. Pasquale?
Mr. Pasquale is going to play it.
They're going to play it.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Mr. Pasquale, you may proceed.
And have you made electronic email conversations with her about all of this, and with that eyebrow again.
No. Send her cards, letters, flowers, no. Gifts, no.
Okay, now I'm going to ask you again. You ask him, or at least Lieutenant Barnes asked him, did you send flowers, letters, and gifts, right?
Yes.
Nobody told you that there in fact were flowers, letters, and gifts sent, right?
Yes.
Nobody told you that there was in fact a love note sent, right?
Yes.
But he told you, no, he hadn't done that, right?
Correct.
Now, you asked Kimmy Newman a lot of things during the course of this interview, right?
Yes, sir.
You also asked on that clip that we just saw where Lieutenant Barnes did about emails, right?
Correct.
And Lieutenant Barnes asked if there were anything, any of these communications about their relationship was sent through the email, right?
Correct.
And you want to know that because if he had answered yes, you were going to go get the emails, right?
That's right.
And he told you no, right?
Correct.
Nobody told you that there are dozens and dozens of emails chronicling romantic communications.
Correct.
You were told no, there were no emails, right?
Yes.
And you were told that by Hemi Newman, right?
Correct.
Hemi Newman told you a lot of things, didn't he?
Yes, sir.
He also told you he didn't murder Rusty Sneiderman, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know that's not accurate, correct?
No, sir. It isn't correct.
Nothing further.
Any redirect?
Yes, Jim.
You may.
Sergeant, the district attorney has asked you a lot of questions about your personal knowledge, what you knew about the relationship, and what Andrea Sneiderman had told you, right?
Yes.
Were you aware that Andrea Sneiderman came into the Dunwoody Police Department on November 24th, 2010?
Yes, sir.
Were you present for that interview?
No, sir.
Did you review that interview that Detective Thompson had with Ms. Sneiderman?
Snippets of it.
Okay. Did you view it in its entirety?
No, sir.
And during the course of that interview, Mrs. Sneiderman told you a lot more than she told you on November the 19th, right?
I haven't seen the whole thing.
When you got the name Hemi Newman from Enterprise, were you able to connect that with the name that Mrs. Sneiderman had given you?
No, sir.
You heard on the 19th. You heard Hemi Newman mentioned on the 19th. You'd heard, or you saw snippets on the 24th with Mrs. Sneiderman discussing Hemi Newman.
I did not see that.
You didn't see that part of it? You didn't think that part was relevant?
I'm going to object. He's leading the witness.
I'm going to sustain the objection and also be an argumentative. You want to ask him a question?
The name Hemi. How many people have you arrested with the name Hemi?
None.
What?
One.
And you heard that name on the 19th, provided by Mrs. Sneiderman.
She told Detective Thompson this
And you were at the table.
on the 19th.
Right.
Yes.
Do you recall her talking to Detective Thompson about this on the 24th? You just said you saw snippets about it, and you don't.
Right. Right. I just
But you were not able to put the name Hemi with the car when you were looking at the cars.
correct.
No further questions.
Any recross?
No, sir.
Lawyers, may this witness be released and excused from subpoena?
No objection from the state.
Ms. Morgan?
No objection.
Sergeant, you're free to go. Come on down. Have a good day. Call your next witness. Please.
Your Honor, the defense would call Tammy Parker to the witness stand.
All right.
You want me to go get her?
Well, I think Mr. Petrie may be. Yeah, someone just needs to retrieve her.
Ms. Parker, come
Ms.
in.
Parker?
Mr. Morgan's getting her.
Okay.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Oh, no problem. And ladies and gentlemen, you can stand and stretch while the witness is coming in and the jury box. You'd like to participate in this process. Actually, it's mandatory for you to do it. Stand and stretch. Voluntary for the gallery. Hi, ladies and gentlemen.
Turn around, raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you shall give this court should be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And where you are, you may proceed. Please state and spell your name for the record.
Tammy Parker, Tammi Parker.
You may proceed.
Ms. Parker, do you know the defendant in this case, Ms. Andrea Sneiderman?
Yes, I do.
How is it that you know Andrea Sneiderman?
My husband and Rusty used to work together at J.P. Morgan a number of years ago, and we met because we both had children around the same age, and they came over for dinner one night, and we became friends.
Can you estimate for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how long ago it would have been that you became friends with Mrs. Sneiderman?
It would have been around 2007.
And did you have occasion to see she and her husband on a fairly regular basis once you had been formally introduced to them?
Yes.
Can you estimate for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury how frequently, first off, you would have seen her from the period of 2007 up until the time of the death of her husband, Rusty, on November 18th of 2010?
I really can. It would have been countless times.
Okay. And can you estimate for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the number of times that you would have seen both she and Rusty Sneiderman, her husband, together during that period of time?
Again, it would have been countless times.
Okay. Were there times when she and her husband, Andrea and Rusty, would have been guests in your home?
Most definitely.
Okay. And would there have been times when your wife, or your husband, excuse me, and yourself would have been guests in the Sneiderman home?
Yes.
Did you know an individual by the name of Shayna Citron?
We had met a few times, but we did not know each other well.
Okay. Did you consider yourself to be a friend of Shayna Citron back in November of 2010?
No.
Okay. Did you know an individual by the name of Andrea Lippman back in 2010?
Yes.
How is it that you knew Andrea Lippman?
Andrea Lippman and I went to a music class together when our kids were very little, and we met then. That was even before 2007, probably 2006.
To your knowledge, was Andrea Lippman and her husband, did they know Mr. and Mrs. Sneiderman as well?
They met through me.
Okay. And when I say Mr. and Mrs. Sneiderman, I mean Andrea and Rusty.
Yes.
Can you describe, going to the year 2010, how many times would you say you had occasion to actually come into contact with both Andrea and Rusty as a couple?
Numerous times.
Okay. What would be the circumstances under which you would come into contact with them as a couple, ma'am?
Could have been dinner at each other's homes. My family went to visit them at the lake house October of that year and spent the weekend there. We would have gone to Sophia's birthday party. We went to other countless birthday parties of various children throughout the year where we were all together.
When you say Sophia, would that have been their daughter?
Yes.
Yeah, how many kids do you have?
One.
Okay, and how old is your son or daughter?
8.
Okay. Did you notice during the year 2010 in the actual presence of Andrea and Rusty any unusual tension between the two of them?
No.
Okay. Would there have been occasions where both you and your husband were with the two of them and with no one else?
Sure.
Okay. And what kind of circumstances would those have been, if you recall?
For example, October of 2010, we spent the weekend at their lake house. It was just my husband, my son, and me, and Andrea, Rusty, and their 2 kids.
Okay. You made reference to Sophia's birthday party. Do you recall whether that would have been before or after the time when you would have spent the weekend at the lake house?
That would have been before, in August.
Okay. Did you have occasion to see Andrea and Rusty interact at that particular function?
Yes.
Okay. Did they have, when you say the lake house, would that have been Andrea and Rusty's lake house?
Yes.
Did Andrea and Rusty have a boat?
Yes.
Do you recall the approximate number of people who would have attended Sophia's birthday party back in 2010? I don't need an exact number, an approximation if you can.
20, 25, 30?
During the course of the day, were people being taken out for rides on the boat?
Yes.
Who would have been driving the boat?
Rusty?
Was that unusual?
No.
Had you been to their lake house prior to that time?
Yes.
Was the birthday party actually at the lake house?
Yes.
Okay. On the previous occasions when you had been to the lake house, would Rusty have been providing folks with rides on the lake?
Yes.
Okay. Did he do so on those occasions at the beginning of the party, at the end of the party, all during the course of the day?
I would have to say all through the course of the day.
Okay. Was there anything unusual that you observed about Sophia's birthday party and the degree of separation or distance between Andrea and Rusty?
No.
Okay. How much time did you actually spend at that function, if you recall, ma'am?
It would have been all day. It was an hour and a half to get there. It's not something you would do and just show up for a little while. It was an all-day event that had lunch, had dinner, and everything in between.
Did you then said you subsequently had occasion to spend time at the lake house sometime in October of 2010. Again,
Yes.
is that correct? How long did you actually spend at the lake house at that time?
Probably 2 days.
When you say 2 days, would that have been on the weekend?
Yes, it was during a break that the kids had at school. I think it was Columbus Day weekend, something like that.
Okay. Would it have been a Saturday, Sunday sort of situation?
Probably. Could have been Friday, Saturday, Saturday, Sunday, one of those.
Do you recall whether you would have spent the evening out at the lake house?
Yes.
And did the Sneidermans, i.e. Rusty and Andrea, spend the evening at the house as well?
Yes.
Would you have dined with them during that period of time?
Yes.
How often would you have dined with them? Breakfast, lunch, dinner?
Sure, yes.
Again, did you notice anything unusual about the relationship between Andrea and Rusty during that period of time when you were at the lake house in October of 2010?
No.
Would you have had occasion to see either one of them after that weekend at the lake house, ma'am?
Yes.
When would that have been?
A few weeks after that, Andrea and I got together one morning without the kids for just a walk. We hadn't seen each other in a few weeks and wanted to catch up, so we just went for a walk one Sunday morning.
Okay. Did you have occasion to see Rusty any time after the time that you spent at the lake house prior to his death?
Yes.
When would that have been, ma'am?
We may have gotten together. I'm trying to remember. I know I saw him the same day that Andrea and I went for a walk. I saw him that day. And I saw him the weekend, I think it was around November 6th, when we were at a charity tournament.
Okay, and would that have been a charity function? Was that a softball game?
Yes.
Was that hosted by Andy Lippman?
Yes.
Is Andy Lippman married to Andrea Lippman?
Yes.
Was, how much time did you see them together on the 6th of November at the softball function?
On the 6th of November, not for a long extended period of time. Rusty was pretty busy playing softball. And I can't remember together. I know I saw each of them separately, and then they were racing off to a family event out of town. But I know that I did see them both that day.
Did you notice anything unusual about their behavior towards each other during that period of time?
No.
Okay. Typically, when you would see them together, would you describe for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the way they interacted with one another?
They were a partnership. They did a lot of things together. They went shopping together at Walmart. I mean, they did everything together. They just were together a lot.
Okay. Did they seem compatible?
Oh, most definitely.
Okay. Did you ever actually hear or see them argue in your presence?
Probably.
Okay. When you say probably, that means you think so, but you're not 100% sure?
Yes.
Okay. Let me go back to the period of time when Andrea was about to begin or prior to beginning her job at General Electric. Do you recall the approximate time of year when that would have been?
It was in the spring, maybe April.
And when you say, first off, maybe suggests you don't know if you're not sure, so...
Could be March, could be April.
Okay. Would that have been in the year 2010?
Yes.
Prior to that time, had Andrea been working in an office or corporate environment?
She had been working from her home.
Okay. You had met her in 2007. At that time, were you living in the Atlanta area?
Yes.
And were Andrea and Rusty living in the Atlanta area?
Yes.
From the time when you met in 2007 until March or April of 2010, had you known Andrea to work outside of the home?
She had a part-time job where her office was inside her house.
So she would have been working in her house?
Yes.
Were you aware of any job she would have had during that time period where she would have gotten up every morning, gone somewhere else to go to work?
No.
Okay. Did she have any discussions with you in the spring of 2010 as to whether or not to take the job with General Electric?
Yes.
Can you describe those, please?
Yes, we met one morning, I want to say it was March or April, I can't quite remember, and at my suggestion, she was thinking about taking this full-time job, and I said, well, let's get together. We met for coffee at a Starbucks, and we came up with a pro-con list to try to decide, is this a job that would be a good idea for you to take?
Okay. What were some of the pros and what were some of the cons, if you recall?
Objection, Your Honor.
And so what's the objection?
Relevance.
And Mr.
I
Clay,
will move along then.
all right, sustain, not
Okay.
relevant.
To your knowledge, did Andrea then shortly thereafter go to work for General Electric?
Yes.
Was that a job where it was necessary for her to get up out of bed and leave the house every day to go to work?
It was, and that's one of the things we talked about. It's a big change to have that work-life balance with your family if you're going to be working a full-time job outside of the house.
Did Andrea have kids at the time when you were having these conversations with her?
Yes.
Did she have a daughter and a son?
Yes.
What were their names? Or what are their names?
Sophia and Ian, and Sophia's the same age as my son.
Do you recall how old they would have been back in the spring of 2010?
They would have been 2 and 5.
Okay.
Ish.
You have a quizzical look on your face.
Trying to do the math in my head real fast.
After Andrea went to work for General Electric, did you have occasion to continue to have contact with her?
Yes.
How often would you continue to have contact with her?
We would touch base probably every, week or two.
When you say touch base, would that be in person or by phone?
Work was fairly busy for both of us at the time, and she was, as I said, adjusting to getting up in the morning and leaving the house.
Excuse me, I think he asked you, was that by phone or in person? Wasn't that the
I
question?
did, Your Honor, but
So you want to respond to that question?
Oh, sure. So it was typically by phone.
okay. How often or how frequently would you have had contact with Mrs. Sneiderman after she went to work for General Electric?
I don't remember.
Okay. Did you ever have conversations with her concerning her boss?
Yes.
When would those conversations have been?
It was late June, maybe early July, that Andrea first called me to talk to me about her boss.
Okay. What did she tell you?
She expressed concern. She said, I don't know, this could be in my head. I just get a really weird vibe. I feel like my boss is hitting on me. And she didn't know how to handle it. She said, well, you're in the corporate world, was looking for some guidance or advice. What should I do?
Okay. Did you in turn have occasion were you in the corporate world at that time?
Yes.
Who were you working for?
For a real estate developer.
Okay. And are you an attorney?
Yes.
Okay. Did you, based on that conversation with Mrs. Sneiderman, have occasion to talk to someone else? Just answer yes or no.
Yes.
Okay. And did you relay what Mrs. Sneiderman had told you to that person?
Yes.
Okay. Based on that conversation, did you subsequently communicate back to Mrs. Sneiderman?
Yes.
What did you tell her?
Objection, Your Honor. I believe believe this is based on hearsay, based on what someone else told her she communicated to the defendant.
Mr. Clegg, response?
Your Honor, I believe whatever would have been said would have explained her conduct, and it is her conduct I'm asking her about at this time.
Well, you can answer that question,
Okay.
but I'm going to sustain the objection to the question you asked previously.
Okay. Did you talk to Andrea Sneiderman?
Yes.
Okay. Did you share with her your opinion as to what she ought to do?
Yes, I did.
What was that opinion that you shared with Andrea Sneiderman?
Based on some limited research that I had done, I advised her not to report the incident to her HR department at her company.
Can you recall the specific time frame in which you would have made that suggestion to her?
It was late June, early July. She was particularly concerned about an upcoming trip that she had out west somewhere, and her boss was going to be going on that same trip.
Okay. Did you subsequently have occasion to have any conversations with Mrs. Sneiderman about that trip?
Yes, we spoke a couple of times within that week about her concerns. At first it was, this could be in my head. Then in subsequent conversation, she says, this isn't in my head. My boss is definitely hitting on me. She was very nervous about it. She was very concerned about the idea that he might show up at her hotel room on this trip, and she just felt nauseated and didn't know what to do.
Okay. When she communicated this concern to you, how long would these conversations take, ma'am?
How long was each conversation?
How long did you talk about this?
20 minutes.
Okay. During this time of the year, this is in June, July, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Did you have subsequent contact with she and Rusty between the date of these conversations and, I guess, Sophia's birthday party, which was in August, I guess, correct?
Oh, sure.
Okay. During those particular meetings, did you have or notice anything unusual between the relationship between Rusty and Andrea?
I did not.
Did you notice any sort of tension between the two of them at that time?
I did not.
Were there occasions, again, during this particular period of time where it would have been you and your husband, Rusty and Andrea?
I'm not sure if my husband was present, but certainly there were occasions that I was around Andrea and Rusty.
Okay. Would you have been physically at their house at some point?
Yes.
Okay. Did you notice either one of them giving each other the silent treatment?
No.
Okay. Where were you on the morning of, well, let me ask you this. Mimosas with a purpose, does that mean something to you?
I think it was technically mimosas for a reason, but yes.
All right. First of all, what is, for those of us who don't drink mimosas, what is a mimosa?
Objection.
Why is this relevant? Why is this relevant?
I expect to delve into a subject related to this particular function, Your Honor. I don't need to ask what a mimosa is.
That's correct. That's the objection.
Okay, that's the objection.
So I'm going
Okay.
to sustain the objection on, you don't need to explain what a drink.
Okay.
Next question, please.
Did you invite Andrea to attend a function with that name?
I did.
Okay. And what was the nature of that particular function?
There's an organization in town that distributes homemade cards that children prepare to the elderly and the sick in the community. And they're always running short of cards.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the
Again,
objection?
relevance.
I'm not trying to get, I will just ask one question.
I sustain the objection.
Was it a charitable function?
It was a charitable function.
We don't need to get in.
Relevance.
What, Mr. Clegg, why is it, if this is a charitable function, why is this relevant to this case? I understand the question.
I'm trying to explain why the two of them were getting together or attempting to get together at the time, Judge.
You can ask it, yes, I'm going to sustain
Okay.
the objection. Answer that question.
Were the two of you trying to get together at or about the time this function occurred?
Yes, I very much wanted Andrea and Sophia to attend.
Okay. Was she able to attend?
She was not.
Okay. Did you have any sort of communication with her about her failure or inability to attend?
I did. She had expressed that Rusty would not be willing to have Andrea and Sophia come because he really wanted to go to the lake on the weekend. It was important to him that the family unit be together on the weekend. So I contacted Rusty. And
Okay, don't get into what Rusty said, okay? Okay. Bottom line is, did Andrea...
I'm sorry, what's the objection, Counselor?
I don't believe the witness finished her answer. She said
Oh,
what
okay.
she was doing. She had contacted Rusty, and he shut her off by saying, "Don't tell us what Rusty said." So
Well, that's fine. I don't have.
Okay,
I would object to her saying what Rusty said, but she hadn't finished talking about what she did before he cut her off.
well, I will allow her to finish explaining her answer. You may.
Go ahead, ma'am.
I contacted Rusty and I asked him if Andrea and Sophia could come to my house.
Okay. And did they do so?
They did not.
Okay. Do you recall when this would have been?
I believe September of 2010, but I'm not positive.
Did Andrea ever communicate with you any concerns about she and Rusty fighting?
Yes,
When would that have been, ma'am?
around that same time that she didn't want to fight with him about whether or not to come to that event.
Okay. Now, when did, to your knowledge, when did typically Rusty and Andrea go to the lake?
Every weekend.
Okay. The function that you have described, did that take place on a weekend?
Yes, it did.
Okay. Going to November the 18th of 2010, where were you on that day, ma'am?
I was at my office.
Okay. And your office is located where?
At the time, it was in Duluth.
Duluth, Georgia?
Yes.
As opposed to Minnesota?
Yes.
Okay. And did you at some point find out on that day about what had happened to Rusty Sneiderman?
Yes.
How did you find out?
I had been in a meeting. I came back to my office to pick up my cell phone to attend another meeting, and I saw that I had 4 missed calls from Andrea Sneiderman.
Okay. What did you do upon seeing that you had 4 missed calls from Andrea Sneiderman?
I picked up my cell phone to see if any of them had been a voicemail message, and before I could even hit that screen, my phone rang again. It said that it was from Andrea Sneiderman, and I answered the phone.
Was Andrea on the other end of the phone?
She was not. It was actually Andrea Lippman holding Andrea Sneiderman's phone.
Okay. Do you recall the approximate time of the morning when that would have happened?
It would have been 11 or 11:30 on that Thursday morning.
Did you then, without getting into specifics, have a conversation with Andrea Lippman?
I did.
Based on that conversation, did you go somewhere?
I did. I went to Atlanta Medical.
Did you, during the course of that first conversation, actually talk to Andrea Sneiderman?
No, I did not.
What happened when you got to Atlanta Medical?
I saw Andrea Lippman.
Okay, let me ask you this. Did you have occasion to, did Andrea Lippman, who had Andrea Sneiderman's phone at that time?
Andrea Lippman had Andrea Sneiderman's phone.
How long did it take you to get from Duluth to the Atlanta Medical Center?
Half an hour.
Can you estimate for the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the approximate time that you would have arrived at the Atlanta Medical Center?
It would have been 11:30 or 12.
Did you remain at the Atlanta Medical Center for some period of time?
Yes. I was there for a while. Eventually, I saw Andrea Sneiderman. Her family was there, and we were there for quite some time, then left Atlanta Medical to head back toward her house.
During the period of time that you were at the Atlanta Medical Center, were you able to make an observation as to who had Andrea Sneiderman's phone?
Andrea Lippman had Andrea Sneiderman's phone.
Do you ever recall during that period of time Andrea Lippman giving that phone back to Andrea Sneiderman?
I do not.
How long were you at Atlanta Medical Center before you left?
I don't recall, maybe 2 hours.
Can you describe Mrs. Sneiderman's condition at the time when you arrived at the Atlanta Medical Center?
Objection.
What's the objection?
I'm sorry, Judge.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear the objection. I can't hear you.
I didn't say anything yet.
That's why I can't hear you.
Okay. I'm about to answer, Judge.
I'm listening.
I believe that it would be improper for her to give her impression of the defendant's appearance. I mean, I believe
I'm going to overrule that objection. Go ahead.
Go ahead, ma'am. Would you please provide your impression or observations of Andrea Sneiderman at the Atlanta Medical Center?
Object again, Judge,
What's
based
the
on
objection?
relevance.
Mr. Clegg, why is that relevant?
It is relevant. The state of Georgia is contending that Andrea Sneiderman knew in advance that her husband was going to be shot on November the 18th of 2010. Her impression and observations of her shortly thereafter the event having actually occurred are extraordinarily germane and relevant to the issues that this jury has to deal with.
Response?
Your Honor, again, what her demeanor was several hours later is not relevant, especially based upon this witness's observations. It would have been what the defendant's demeanor was at the time that she got the information, not several hours later.
All right. For the purpose of this, I'm going to overly object. You can answer the question if you can, but you're going to have to tell this jury, what time did you make this observation?
Around noon, she was shocked and distressed.
Okay. What is it specifically that led you to draw the conclusion that she was shocked and distressed?
There was a lot of nonverbal communication. Words wouldn't come out, more hand gestures that were ringing with emotion.
How long did you observe Mrs. Sneiderman remain in that condition that you have just described?
Off and on for weeks.
Where did you go after you left the Atlanta Medical Center?
I went directly to Dunwoody Prep.
Okay. Why did you go to Dunwoody Prep?
Andrea had left her car there, so I went there so I could pick up her car and get her car home to her.
Okay. When you say Andrea, we've been talking about an Andrea Sneiderman and an Andrea Lippman. Which Andrea had left her car at Dunwoody Prep?
Andrea Sneiderman had left her car at Dunwoody Prep.
Did you go to that location with anyone else?
Andrea Lippman and I went together so that one of us could take the car.
Okay. And was the car picked up?
It was not.
Okay. Did one of you get the car?
We were not able to get the car. We could not find her keys.
Okay. What did you do after that, ma'am?
I went to her house.
Okay. And how long did you remain at her house?
I was there until 5 p.m. when we knew that Sophia was on her way home.
Did you have any contact with any sort of representatives of the Dunwoody Police Department at the Atlanta Medical Center?
I did not.
Did you have any contact with the Dunwoody Police Department at Dunwoody Prep?
I did not.
Did you have any contact with the Dunwoody Police Department while you would have been at Andrea Sneiderman's house in the mid to late afternoon?
I did not.
Were you back at the house on the 19th?
I was there later that evening on the 18th first, and then also on the 19th.
Were you there when representatives of the Dunwoody Police Department arrived at her home?
I was.
Did you participate in any sort of interview that was conducted of the Dunwoody Police Department, or of Andrea Sneiderman by the Dunwoody Police Department?
I did not.
Did you have contact with Andrea Sneiderman on or about the 30th day of December of 2010?
Yes.
How is it that you had contact with Mrs. Sneiderman on that day?
I had sent her an email. I knew that would be a tough day for her. It was the...
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Relevance.
Mr. Clegg, why is this relevant from this witness?
I think it explains why it is that this witness was communicating with Mrs. Sneiderman.
I'm going to sustain that objection. You won't be answering that question. Next question.
Was that her anniversary?
It was.
Objection, Your Honor.
What's the objection?
Relevance.
Mr. Clegg,
Explains why it is that she's contacting
I
the
understand,
defendant.
but I'm going to sustain that objection.
Okay.
And I'm going to direct the jury to disregard that response.
Okay, go ahead. What time of day was it that you communicated with her on December 30th of 2010?
It was during the workday. I had sent her an email earlier in the day, and then we spoke by telephone later in the day.
Okay. Did you have any conversation with her about possible individuals that she suspected of having killed her husband?
Yes.
What did she tell you?
In the course of the conversation wasn't about this. We were talking about something else, but then, okay.
We're only focusing on this. We don't want to know about the rest
Answer
of it.
this
Okay?
question, please.
Sure
Yeah.
thing. So in the course of the conversation, we came around to, so how are you doing? What's going on with you? And Andrea indicated that she felt that she knew who had committed the murder.
Okay. Who did she tell you?
And she said that it was Hemi.
Okay. Did you know at that time who Hemi was?
I had no idea. She had to say, my boss.
What was your response to that?
I thought she had lost touch with reality.
Okay. Did you share that concern with her?
I suspect that I did.
Had she, prior to that time, had you had contact with her during from the date of Rusty's death on November the 18th up until December the 30th?
Yes.
Okay. How frequently would you have had contact with her?
I saw her every day during the first week and probably every 2 to 3 days after that.
Did she have her phone back in her possession at some point?
Yes,
Going back to the 18th of November of 2010, do you know when she got her phone back in her possession on that day?
I do not.
How often would you estimate between November the 18th of 2010 and December 30th of 2010 you actually either saw in person or spoke to Andrea Sneiderman on the phone?
On the phone?
Or saw her in person or talked to her on the phone? How many
Oh.
times did you communicate with her?
I'm sure we communicated every day.
Had she made any attempts to upgrade her security at her home?
Yes.
Can you tell us about that, please, ma'am?
Objection, relevance.
Mr. Clegg, why is this relevant?
Yeah, no, this is very relevant. The state is contending that she had knowledge that Mr. Newman was the killer and in fact had knowledge of that fact presumably prior to November the 18th. If she is making attempts to upgrade the security on her home, that tends to rebut that presumption.
State response.
Your Honor, I disagree with Mr. Clay's position. I don't believe it rebuts the response, and I think it is irrelevant.
I'm going to sustain the objection. Is it?
Okay.
Next question.
Did you ever have occasion to spend the night at Andrea Sneiderman's house during that period of time?
No, I did not.
Okay. How far away did you live from Mrs. Sneiderman?
10 minutes in no traffic.
Yeah. Were you with Andrea on the evening of January the 4th when she was notified of the arrest of Hemi Newman?
I was with her later that evening.
Okay, but not at the time of the actual notification?
Correct.
Okay. Let me ask you one other question, ma'am. At some point during you know what Shiva is?
Yes.
What is Shiva?
It's a period of mourning for a week after a loved one dies.
Okay. Did you ever have occasion to see or observe Hemi Newman in Andrea Sneiderman's home?
I did. That was the first time I saw him.
Okay. Were you introduced to him?
I don't know if I was introduced to him or if he was just pointed out.
Okay. That was the first time you had seen him?
Yes.
Had you seen him any other time prior to his arrest on January 4th of 2011?
No.
One moment. Oh, let me ask you this.
You may.
Bowling. Did you have any plans to go bowling with Mrs. Sneiderman and her husband at some point?
We did.
When would that have been?
The day before Rusty's death, Andrea and I spoke that Wednesday morning, and we were talking about plans for Friday night to go bowling.
Okay, so the 18th is what day of the week?
Thursday.
17th, you have the conversation?
Yes, the morning of the 17th.
19th, you're making plans to go bowling.
We were making plans on the morning of the 17th to go bowling the evening of the 19th.
And who was that to involve?
That was, Andrea called me and told me that she was inviting the Lippmans as well.
And last question. Have you ever seen Andrea Sneiderman wear a jean jacket?
No.
Good enough, ma'am. Thank you very much.
All right, Ms. Hill, I believe this is your witness. You
Yes,
may
Judge.
examine if you wish.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Ms. Parker.
Hello.
Okay, let me just start with a couple questions about the fact that you told us you and the defendant are friends, correct?
Yes,
How long have you been friends?
since 2007.
Would you say you were good friends?
Yes,
You also mentioned Andrea Littman, correct?
yes,
The three of you were good friends?
yes, but I was friendly with Andrea Lippman and friendly with Andrea Sneiderman.
And in fact, the defendant in this case, Andrea Sneiderman, met Andrea Littman through you, I believe it was your
At
testimony.
a party at my house, yes.
So you're kind of the middle person between her and Ms. Littman.
Well, they met through me, and then they had their own friendship.
Correct. Would you say that the defendant is a pretty direct person?
Yes,
Not a shrinking violet, correct?
correct.
She knows how to communicate clearly with others, correct?
Yes,
And in your experience with her as a friend, she's not had any problems making herself clear to other people, has she?
not in my experience.
Now, you talked to us about the fact that the defendant was taking a new job at GE.
Yes.
Right? And I think you told us it was probably somewhere in the spring, maybe around April of 2010.
Yes.
She was excited about the new job, right?
That was not my, I wouldn't say excited.
Okay. Tell us, if you know, how she felt about...
Trepidatious.
Trepidatious. Well, one could be excited but still have trepidations. Would you agree?
Could be, sure.
Okay, so would you say that the defendant was excited about this new opportunity and new job?
I did not witness any excitement about the new opportunity.
Okay, so was she not happy about the fact that she was going to work at GE?
She was nervous and trepidatious about a work-life balance.
So the fact that she had to juggle work and home life was something that caused concern to her? Is that what you're telling us?
She was nervous about it.
She was nervous about that. So she was not looking forward to going to work at GE because of that?
Actually, we didn't talk about that.
Did you tell us that you sat down and actually had a conversation with her about the possibility of entering the job market again?
Yes, and my advice based on that conversation was that she shouldn't take the job.
So that was your advice?
That was my advice.
Did she follow your advice?
No, she didn't.
Okay. And in fact, she didn't follow your advice and she took the job with GE, correct?
Yes.
And when she took the job at GE, at some point she shared concerns with you that she was having about her boss.
Yes.
Do you remember when, as it relates to when she started GE, she actually shared the concerns she was having with her boss?
She shared the concerns with me in late June or early July.
So if she started in April, just a couple months later, she shared the concerns?
Yes.
And I think you testified that you advised her not to go to HR or Human Resources.
I did.
Were you familiar? You said you had done some limited research. Did you? Did you do limited research?
I spoke to somebody else.
Okay.
That was the subject of an objection, so I didn't want to go down that road.
And without telling us.
Respond this way. Until there's an objection, answer the question.
Yes, I spoke with someone else.
And without telling us what you spoke to someone else about, was that the extent of your limited?
It was. Research.
Research?
Yes.
Did you, during that time, bother to contact GE and find out what their policy was?
Of course not.
So you were not familiar with the fact that GE actually had a policy in place that would allow for an individual to report such problems with a boss?
I would have been awfully surprised if they did not have a formal program.
And you were not aware of the fact that GE actually had a procedure in place where an individual could report such harassment anonymously? You gave her that advice, were you?
I would have been awfully surprised if they did not have such a program.
Okay, but if you would answer my question, because my question was, you were not aware of the fact that GE had a policy that allowed an individual to report such harassment anonymously, were you?
I never read such a policy.
The question calls for a yes or no answer, and then you can explain. So, would you like for me to repeat the question?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Okay. So yes or no, were you aware of the fact that GE had a policy that allowed for an individual to report sexual harassment anonymously?
I was not, though any big company would have such a policy.
Well, the way it's going to work, if a question allows you to say yes, no, then you can explain. So you answer yes, no, then explain.
Okay.
So do you need her to restate the question so you can answer yes, no, then explain?
Did I not just answer no and then explain?
Answer the question.
Yes, Judge. When you gave the defendant advice about not reporting the information she had shared with you to Human Resources, you had no idea what, if any, effect it would have on her job at GE, did you?
I did not.
Okay. And, in fact, you told her not to report it because you thought it was career limiting, correct?
That's correct.
And the fact that she was experiencing what she told you was an uncomfortable situation with her boss, you were also aware of the fact that she didn't share that with Rusty.
Yes, I was.
And When you had this conversation, thank you, when you had this conversation with the defendant, she didn't tell you that anything overt had actually happened, did she?
At the time, nothing overt had happened, according to Andrea.
Okay. So the answer to my question is no?
Correct.
During the conversation that the defendant had with you, had she taken any trips up to that point?
I don't believe so.
She hadn't talked to you about any trips she had taken before June?
I don't remember.
Well, did she talk to you about a trip she had taken to Melbourne, Florida?
I don't remember.
Did she talk to you about a trip that she had taken to Norfolk, Virginia?
I don't remember.
Are you aware of the fact that Norfolk and Florida were before June or July?
I'm not.
2010.
I am not.
So you were not aware of the fact that she had in fact taken trips with the defendant, with Hemi Newman already, before she had the conversation with you?
The only trip we talked about that was a concern was the one that was coming up, and it was a city that was out west.
Do you remember which city?
I do not.
Could it have been Denver?
I do not remember which
Could it
city.
have been the state of Colorado?
It could have been any city out west.
And this trip had not taken place yet, is that
Correct.
correct? Did she talk to you, do you know whether or not she took the trip?
Yes, she did.
She did take the trip?
Yes.
Did you have a conversation with her after she came back from the trip?
Yes.
And you probably would have, because you told us that this trip caused her to be nauseated, correct?
Yes, but there was a conversation that took place before the trip as well that we haven't talked about yet.
Well, that wasn't my question.
Okay.
My question was, prior to the trip out west, you had a conversation with the defendant, and I believe it was your testimony on direct examination that during this conversation where she was expressing to you the feelings she had about the upcoming trip, she was nauseated.
That is correct.
And she was very nervous about this upcoming trip,
Yes.
correct? And she really, really, really was uncomfortable about the fact that she had to go on this trip out west with her boss.
Yes.
And you know she went on that trip.
Yes.
You had a conversation when she came back from the trip, correct?
Yes, but it wasn't anything special.
Nothing special about what happened out west.
No, because of a conversation we had before her trip.
Did she share with you the fact that while she was out west, she was gazing at the stars with her boss?
She did not.
Did she share with you that while she was out west, the two of them woke up together in Denver?
She did not.
She didn't tell you that, did she?
No, she did not.
But what she told you was that there was a point where he had made his intentions clear. His intentions
before the trip, yes.
Okay. And so the answer to my question is yes. There was a time where she told you her boss made his intentions clear.
Yes, before the trip.
Okay, but my question was there a time when she told you that her boss had made his intentions
Objection,
clear?
Your Honor, asked and answered again.
All right, I'm gonna overrule the objection. I'm giving both lawyers some latitude. The jury will make a determination on whether or not they heard it previously. So for right now, I'm gonna overrule the objection, asked and answered, for right now.
Yes, Judge. So,
Well, the jury's giving me the signal that they want a break. And I was trying not to cut you off in mid-sentence. So I was just trying to wait till you got to a pause, and Mr. Clegg's objection was very timely. So that I can give the jury, give me 10 minutes. All right.
Welcome to 11 Alive's continuing coverage of the trial of Andrea Sneiderman. I'm Jeff Hullinger along with attorney Jay Strongwater. Jay, we have been listening to Tammy Parker, who was a friend of Andrea Sneiderman, on the witness stand, and at first glance with her comfort, the way that she was playing to the jury and the judge, and at ease with which she was answering questions, we looked it up, and she is an attorney, an attorney who was trained at Emory University and is a real estate attorney and has been very efficient on the witness stand.
Correct. She's obviously very comfortable talking in front of groups. She does not interrupt. She waits and listens to the question and gives a succinct answer.
What are your thoughts so far as we roll into the afternoon? I think the biggest newsworthy note, at least from the morning, was the fact that Andrea Sneiderman may indeed be testifying at this trial in the next day or two.
They left that issue open. Judge Adams asked her at the beginning of the defense case whether she was aware that she has the exclusive right to decide whether to testify. One of her attorneys said that that was an issue to be reserved until after they finish calling their witnesses, and then before the defense rests, the judge will readdress the issue, and Andrea will say on the record whether she wishes to testify or wishes to defer.
I thought it was interesting to hear defense attorney Tom Clegg ask her out of the blue, so to speak, if she had ever seen Andrea Sneiderman in a jean jacket, and that comes as the result of the waitress from the Pulse nightclub in Greenville, South Carolina, who said she saw Hemi Newman and Andrea Sneiderman dancing, groping that night as the only two on the dance floor, and that at that moment Andrea Sneiderman was wearing a jean jacket.
Well, clearly the defense is picking at certain facts that they want to dispute. They picked on it at the beginning of their opening statement. Now they're presenting testimony that casts the state's testimony in doubt.
From Kristen, I have an email here, a question for you this afternoon, Jay. It says, when the witness that was on the stand in the form of Tammy Parker was there, the attorney asked her how she communicated with Andrea, phone or in person. The witness trailed and wasn't answering the question directly. There was no objection, but Judge Adams interjected and told her to answer that question. Are judges able to rule on an objection that wasn't made by an attorney?
They are. They control the courtroom. Everybody listens to the judge. The judge could tell them to move it along if he thinks that questions are being repetitive. He can interrupt and ask his own question if he is unclear about how the witness has answered.
Rick in Jackson, Georgia is asking you this. Do you think that murder charges will be brought back if she is found guilty of any of these charges?